Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hari Om. Let's get started.
Sahanavavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavijyankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gita Dhyana. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanina Swayam Vyasena Pratidam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashaadhyayini Amba Tvamanusandadhami Bhagavad-gite Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhi Mullara-vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata-talya Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayam Pradeepaha Prapanna Parijataya Putra Vaitreka Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhirbhokta Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasudevasudam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadrona Tata Jayadratha Jala Gandharanilotpala Shalyagrahavati Navahani Karnena Verakuta Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhanavartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharyavacha Sarojamamalam Geetartagantodvatam Nanakhyanakesaram Harikata Sambhodhanabodhitam Yogi Sarjana Shatparairavaraha Pipiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shriyasi Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayati Girim Yatripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunindra Rudra Marudaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vede Sangha Padakramopanishade Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatina Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidustudha suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha.
Hari Om. So Bhagavan says that the best accomplished in yoga are those who, fixing their mind on him, worship him ever steadfast, endowed with supreme faith. Aveshya manaha, completely fixing the mind on him. And those who worship the Nirguna Brahman, they also come to me only. The Nirguna Brahman is pure consciousness and is indeterminate. There is no way we can determine what it is. Chaitanyam, it's called, or pure consciousness, is generally described as something that is not, in contrast or as a contrast to something that is. Anything that is part of creation, that can be perceived, that is cognizable, that can be comprehended, and something that is not all of this. So typically there are 5 ways, that we describe Chaitanyam. The first is Swatantra Chaitanyam. Swatantra Chaitanyam meaning it is not a part, it's not a property, it is not a product of anything. It is not dependent. Like whatever we know of has some dependency or the other. Anything that is part of creation is dependent on something else in some way or the other. Pure consciousness is not dependent on anything. It is independent. Ananta Chaitanyam. It is not finite. Whatever we know of is finite in terms of space. There is a limit to it in terms of the expanse, to how much it can occupy space, how much it can extend. Pure consciousness goes beyond, extends beyond space. Nitya Chaitanyam. It does not perish. Again, whatever we know of has some kind of finite aspect in terms of time. It's finite in time. Pure consciousness extends beyond time. Atma Chaitanyam. It has no form. Whatever we know of has some kind of shape or size, some kind of a physical definition. Pure consciousness is indefinable. And Brahma Chaitanyam. It is not anything. Pure consciousness pervades everything that we know of, pervades whatever we know of. By itself, it is not anything. And Bhagavan, while giving the assurance that the devotees of both his aspects, both the formless aspect and his aspect with form, the Saguna and the Nirguna, both of them attain him. But at the same time, he lays down certain rules, discipline that is expected of each of these devotees, followers, to abide by, to follow. And by the way, it's actually almost the same if you look at it. Okay. So worshippers of Saguna Brahman, Bhagavan says, does actions for me, with me as the supreme, as the ultimate goal, devoted to me. For Nirguna Brahman worshippers, he says, having restrained all the senses. The restrained senses automatically develop the capability to focus on God. Because when the senses are restrained, meaning the senses are not focused on anything that is comprehensible, anything that can be perceived, then automatically it starts focusing on God. And when actions are for God, this is of the Saguna Brahman, he is the supreme and devotion is on to him, then senses are automatically restrained. Because when the entire focus is Bhagavan, the senses are not wandering hither and thither. So if you actually look at it, these are similar, or you can say the same. Then Bhagavan says for the Saguna Brahman, free from or devoid of attachment. And correspondingly for the Nirguna Brahman, he says everywhere even-minded. For Saguna Brahman, he says without any enmity towards all creatures. For the Nirguna Brahman, he says rejoices in the welfare of others. So Bhagavan defines these rules, these disciplines that will help the seeker, the devotee, to be able to focus on the form that he or she chooses to follow and be devoted to. Some of you had expressed that you are unable to comprehend, unable to understand this aspect of worship for the Nirguna Brahman. See, that's a fact, right? Some say that God is with form. Some say God is formless. Yet others say that this aspect of formless is a form of Bhagavan. That itself is a form. So there are various ways people, decipher, comprehend, express, intellectualize. All of these are there. My outlook in this, or what I say is, how does all this matter? See, Bhagavan has clearly said Ananya Bhakti. At the end of the day, whether you follow the Nirguna Brahman through Jnana or the Saguna Brahman through Bhakti, ultimately it leads to Bhakti. So, if that is the case, let's focus on Bhakti towards him, devotion onto him, in any form that we choose, any form that appeals to us. If it is a form, then fine. Any of those infinite forms, absolutely fine, of Bhagavan. If it is formless, and if we are able to concentrate and train our minds to be able to do that, that's also perfectly fine. But the time we spend on thinking and debating about form, formless, why here, this, that time we can conveniently devote to worship of the form that we comprehend, that we are comfortable with, that appeals to us, and that is useful to us. And when we do that, I sincerely believe we'll figure out what we don't know today. It will come to us over a period of time. So let us see now what Bhagavan has to say about this. We go to verse 12.5. Kleshodhikatarastesham avyaktasaktachetasam
avyakta hi gatir dukkam
dehavadbhiravapyate
क्लेशोऽधिगतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते.
Kleshaha, the difficulty, adhika is greater, tesham, of those, avyakta sakta chetasam, whose minds are set on the unmanifest. Cheta, mind. Sakta, firm, attached to, set on. Avyakta, the unmanifest. For he says, avapyate, achieving, gatihi, progress, avyakta, towards the unmanifest. Dukkham is very hard. Devadbihi, for the embodied. Greater is the difficulty of those whose minds are set on the unmanifest. For achieving progress towards the unmanifest is very hard for the embodied. For a human being, it is very hard, very difficult to not be conscious of the body. Have you ever met anyone in your life who's absolutely, not conscious of his or her body at all times, every time? Till now, I have not met. If I meet, it will be really useful, True Mahatma, that person will be. But there are people I have heard that there are people who do that. I have met people who are like that for a particular point in time. Not always. I have met those people. So while a lot of gurus lecture about the critical aspect of realization being to be disconnected with the body, Bhagavan says that's not necessary at all. And some of these gurus who vehemently say that, the shallowness of their words is obvious when you look at their own lifestyle. When one looks at the kind of lives they lead, where they ensure as well as ensure their bodily comfort, then, it is pretty shallow, right? Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, anyone who only lectures about Aham Brahmasmi or I am Brahman not only deceives the world, but actually deceives himself. Because that way, you are not focusing on the Nirguna Brahman. You are just lecturing about focusing on the Nirguna Brahman. So it is better to focus on the Saguna Brahman then. So you are deceiving not only the world, but yourself. One who adores the Nirguna Brahman, one who espouses, who follows, who says that that is the way, must be free from this quote-unquote body feeling at all times. If one cannot free oneself, one's own self, from one's own form, then they can never understand the concept of the formless divine. First, we have to understand that our body, mind, and intellect is not us, is not our soul. Not only do we have to understand that, yes, theoretically we all understand that, but we have to experience that, we have to live that. If you are able to do that, then we can attempt to focus on the formless divine. If we can't even do that for ourselves, it's impossible to, not difficult. Bhagavan says they are difficult. It's impossible to focus if you are not able to do that. Bhagavan says it is difficult for people who can disassociate themselves, who can sanniyendriya gramam, who can completely control their own senses. For them it is difficult. So for a person who is very much interested in worshipping the Nirguna Brahman, the first and foremost is absolute control over one's own senses, restraining all the senses. Sanniyam yendriya gramam, all the collection of senses. Please note, Bhagavan says, he uses the word dehavad bihi. Dehavad bihi, embodied. It means embodied. Embodied is not just the body. Body is one part of the embodied. Embodied also includes the mind and the intellect. And any other perceptive organ that we can think of. You want to call it brain, like scientists call it brain. Anything that is embodied within this structure. Anything and everything. Whether it is nervous system, whether it is the circulatory system, whatever it may be. All of that. All of that have to be restrained. So obviously it is very, very difficult. The easy way for the human being is worship of Bhagwan with form. And Sri Krishna gives us an assurance through Arjuna. He assures Arjuna, and through Arjuna he gives us an assurance about all the worshippers of the Saguna Brahman. He gives all of them that assurance. We'll recite verses 6 and 7 together.
Yetu sarvani karmani.
Yetu sarvani karmani.
Mai sanyasya matparaha.
Mai sanyasya matparaha.
Ananyeneva yogena.
Ananyeneva yogena.
Mam dhyayanta upasate.
Mam dhyayanta upasate.
Tesham aham samuddarta.
Tesham aham samudharta.
Mrityu samsara sagarat.
Mrityu samsara sagarat.
Bhavami nachirat partha.
Bhavami nachirat partha.
Maya veshita chetasam.
Maya veshita chetasam.
Yetu sarvani karmani. Mai sanyasya matparaha. Ananyeneva yogena. Mam dhyayanta upasate. Tesham aham samuddarta. Mrityu samsara sagarat. Bhavami nachirat partha. Maya veshita chetasam.
Two, but. So Bhagavan has just spoken about the Nirguna, right? The followers, seekers of Nirguna Brahman. He says two, but. Ye, those who. upasate, worship. The last word of the first stanza. Upasate, worship, those who worship. Sanyasya, renouncing. Sarvani, karmani, all actions. Mai, in me. Matparaha, with me as the supreme. Dhyayanta, meditating. Mam, on me. Ananye naiva, single-minded. They sure and surely. Yogena, with devotion. For them, tesham, for such people, tesham, aveshita chetasam. These people, aveshita chetasam, whose minds are set. Chetaha, mind, aveshita, set, focused, attached. Maya, on me. Bhavami, I become. Samudharta, the savior. Aham samudharta also. I become the savior, samudharta. Aham samudharta. I lift them. Samudharta means lifting them. Saving them in terms of lifting them, extracting them. And he lifts them and extracts them from where? Mrityu samsara sagarat. Out of the ocean of mortal life. The cycle of mortal life. So Bhagavan says, but those who worship me, renouncing all actions in me, with me as the supreme, meditating on me with single-minded devotion, for them whose minds are set on me. So he's talking about the Saguna Brahman worshipper. And he says, I become the savior. I lift them out of the ocean of mortal life. And he uses the word Nachirat, without any delay. Very soon, O Partha. So what a beautiful assurance from Bhagavan. He says, Sarvani karmani mai sanyasya, renouncing all actions in me. Remember, he's talking about sannyasa. See, we had defined sannyasa earlier also in our study, right? As giving up the lower to take up the higher. Sannyasa doesn't mean abandoning and going to the Himalayas and doing nothing. Absolutely not. Sannyasa is extreme hard work. Sannyasa is giving up the lower to take up the higher. And what higher can there be other than Bhagavan? Bhagavan says, renounce all actions for God. Everything, all actions. Dedicating all actions to Bhagavan and giving up the result of all these actions for him. So we had also said, I had given what I think is a very interesting definition of renunciation or sannyasa as total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit. I'll repeat that. Total, complete, non-stop, dedicated pursuit is sannyasa. And Bhagavan says that in the form of single-minded devotion. Ananye naiva yogena. So we have all got our, the massage and all that, treatment and all that, right? In this Tailadhara, the oil flows absolutely smoothly. You keep looking at it, you don't see a break. When water sometimes flows, you see disruptions. But this one is absolutely, when it gets into that rhythm, it's flowing in a smooth, steady, continuous form. Similarly, the mind in this kind of a bhakti flows towards the Lord without a break. Another example that I like is, when you go to these churches, especially in some of the old buildings, white light, when it passes through colored glass, they have all these various colored glass, it imbibes that color, it's imbued with that color and comes out. The single-minded mind is permeated by Bhagavan, just like this color permeates the light, white light. And Bhagavan says, Tesham Veshita Chetasam Maya. For such people, Tesham Veshita Chetasam Maya, whose minds are set on me. Bhavami, I become. Samudharta, the savior, the one who lifts them. Mrityu Samsara Sagarat, out of the ocean of mortal life. Mrityu Samsara Sagarat. the material world or the samsara is of the nature of repeated births and deaths. Bhagavan has talked about this earlier also, right? Continuous cycle of birth and death. And the samsara is also like an ocean. So he's, mrityu, when Bhagavan says mrityu samsara, he's talking about the fact that the samsara is the constant cycle of you get born and then you die again. Then again mrityu. Mrityu after mrityu after mrityu. And he also uses the word sagara. Sagara is ocean. When you're in the middle of the ocean, neither the beginning nor the end is seen. It's absolutely endless. Similarly, samsara is endless. From the perspective of course, everything has an end. But when you're in the middle of it, it just expands. The expanse is seemingly endless. Of course, the ocean also has an end. Seemingly endless. So there is this verse, we talked about C. Rajagopalachari's this thing last satsang, right? In that Bhaja Govindam. Punarapi jananam punarapi maranam. Punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudut stare. Kripaya pare pahi murare. The repeated cycle of birth and death and the constant reappearing in the womb. The thorny voyages across samsara's endless ocean. Take me across, O merciful Lord, Murari. So Bhagavan had said earlier also, we had gone through in chapter 9. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. So Bhagavan had said that those who excluding everything else. See, here also he says that, right? Excluding everything else, think of me, and are completely devoted to me, always abiding in me, their prosperity and welfare I secure. And he assures again. Earlier he had assured, he said, Vahami, I personally carry. Here he is saying, Bhavami, I become the savior. I personally carry and I become. And we had talked about yoga and kshema, providing and preserving, protecting. Both Bhagavan takes responsibility for. Providing what we don't have and protecting what we have. See, in our material lives on a day-to-day basis, we do this really well. Whatever we don't have, we acquire through money, or if we don't have money, through loan. And whatever we have, we protect through insurance. So this part we have learned from Bhagavan very well. Okay, we have excellently learned this. Acquiring what we don't have, protecting what we have. So along with taking LIC policy, we should also take Vahamyaham policy. LIC will ensure that those people we leave behind are taken care of. Vahamyaham will ensure that our soul is taken care of. And Bhagavan says, Aham samudharta. Like a cat that securely holds on to its kitten, he, the father, the creator of all of us, he, Bhagavan, lifts us, his devotee, across the ocean of samsara. You would have seen these feline, the cat, the leopard, the tiger, they hold, it's called marjara. It does, like a monkey's baby clings to the monkey. It's the responsibility of the baby to cling to the mother. In cat, it's the responsibility of the cat to hold on to the baby. So Bhagavan says, I take responsibility. I will lift you up. Now, after glorifying devotion, Bhagavan now gives the sadhana, the practice for the bhakta to follow. And he gives it beautifully. He gives it based on the capacity that the bhakta has. So from verses 8 to 11, Bhagavan will say, do this. And if you cannot do this, do that. If you cannot do that, do this. So he will give alternatives for us to follow. We will go verse by verse. Verse 8.
Mayyeva mana adasva
Mayyeva mana adatsva
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Nivasishyasi mayi eva.
Nivashishyasi mayi eva.
Ata urdhvam na samshayaha.
Ata urdhvam na samshayaha.
Mayyeva mana adastva. Mayi buddhim niveshaya. Nivasishyasi mayyeva. Ata urdhvam na samshayaha.
Adatsva. Adatsva means fix. Fix what? Mana, your mind. Mayeva, in me only. Niveshaya. Niveshaya, place. Buddhim, your intellect. Mayi, in me. Fix your mind in me only. Place your intellect in me only. Ata urdhvam, thereafter, na samshayaha, there is no doubt. Navishishyasi, you shall live. Mayeva, in me alone. Fix your mind in me only. Place your intellect in me only. Thereafter, you shall no doubt live in me alone. See, the mana or the mind is the seat for feelings and emotions for the embodied. See here, mind and intellect of the person who has this body. And the mind and intellect are part of that body. Mind and intellect don't exist without the body. Maybe for some time, because of medical advancement, for some time they can take the brain and put it in a jar, but not forever. It is of the nature of sankalpa vikalpa, the mind. Thoughts generating, sankalpa vikalpa means that the thoughts generating from the mind are of the nature of this and that. It vacillates. The buddhi is the seat for judgment, opinion of the embodied. It is of the nature of nishchayatmika. And nishchayatmika means that the thoughts generating from the intellect are of the nature of this only. It doesn't vacillate, this, that, this or that, this and that. No, this only. So while the mind thoughts generating from it are vacillating in nature, the thoughts generating from the buddhi are stubborn in nature. The intellect are stubborn in nature. The human being is born classically with two tendencies. It's called Vidya Guna and Avidya Guna. Vidya Guna is noble gunas. Avidya Guna are the base gunas. Vidya Guna takes one towards spirituality. Avidya Gunas takes one towards samsara. And a mixture of this, permutation and combination, right? We have both the tendencies. Both take us, oscillates, vacillates between the two. Sometimes we suddenly feel spiritual, sometimes we suddenly feel samsaric. Both are dormant and in equal measure when we are born. But as we grow and as we evolve over a period of our aging, the aging process, one of these becomes more dominating. And based on which one is more dominating, the individual veers towards either of these aspects. The samsaric aspects, worldly aspects give pleasure and make the person joyful, and the spiritual aspects, the aspect of learning about Bhagwan and being devoted to Bhagwan, that give the person happiness. So either taking the person Godward or taking the person towards samsara. And Bhagwan says, let not your mind vacillate and let not your intellect be stubborn on worldly matters. Just keep both of them on me. This is nothing but Ananya Bhakti. So in various ways, if you look at this and you go through this again and again, it all comes down to one fundamental or two or three fundamental aspects depending on what you are thinking about or what you are reading. So this is nothing but Ananya Bhakti, what Bhagavan says here. And when he says this, thereafter, when you do this, you shall abide in me alone without a doubt. So the first step that Bhagavan tells people is, if you can, just put your mind and your intellect in me. Don't allow it to vacillate in worldly aspects. Don't allow it to be fixed on worldly aspects. put them in me. What if the sadhaka cannot do that? What if the sadhaka cannot focus the mind and the intellect on God? Then Bhagavan says in the next verse,
Atha chittam samadhatum
Atha chittam samadhatum
na shaknoshi mayi stiram
na shaknosi mayi sthiram
abhyasa yogena tataha
abhyasa yogena tataha
mamichaptum dhananjaya.
Mamichhaptum dhananjaya.
Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mayi stiram abhyasa yogena tataha mamichaptum dhananjaya.
Atha, if what? Na sakshnosi. Na shaknosi, you are not able to. If you are not able to, samadhatum, fix, chittam, the mind, sthiram, steadily, mai, in me. Tataha, then, abhyasa yogena, by the yoga of constant practice, abhyasa, ichhaptum, seeking to reach, mam, me, Dhananjaya, O Dhananjaya. So Bhagavan says, if you are unable to fix your mind steadily upon me and place your intellect in me, it is implied here. Although Bhagavan uses only mind, he has clearly specified in the last verse that both have to be done. So if you are unable to fix your mind in me, and if you are unable to place your intellect upon me, then by the yoga of constant practice, seek to reach me, O Dhananjaya. The staunch devotion is that in which the mind does not deviate from Bhagavan. Ananya Bhakti, it is absolutely focused, single-pointed, ekagrata. A mind that oscillates between God and the world, which we just talked about, right? Just keeps moving. That can be trained by constant practice, abhyasa yogena. The mind that and intellect that oscillates, but wishes to, we are talking about a seeker, we are talking about a sadhaka. We are not talking about someone who says, forget it, I'll talk about it in next janma or when I'm 80 years old. I don't need Bhagavad Gita right now. When I'm old and I'm in Vanaprastha, or what is it called? Sannyasa ashram, then I'll think about Bhagavad Gita. Not those people. You're talking about people who are keen, people who are seekers. For those people, if the mind, and even the seekers, there are so many challenges in life, so many things going on, not able to constantly focus. For them, Bhagavan says, practice, abhyasa yogena. There's this interesting, pretty little story. In the middle of the night, a young Arjuna, he woke up to find his brother Bhima not next to him. Normally, these brothers sleep together next to each other. So he's missing from his bed. And when Bhima does not return after some time, Arjuna, says, let me go find him. And he goes around looking for him, not to be seen anywhere. And then he hears from the kitchen sounds. The sounds are of somebody eating. And he goes in and he actually hears, Bhima. He is very familiar with the sound of Bhima eating. Normal people eating is very different from Bhima eating. The sounds of Bhima eating are very different from normal people eating. So you can make out, it's pitch dark, so you cannot see. But he can make out that Bhima is gobbling up the food. And he starts thinking, he says, my God, it's pitch dark, I can't even see. And this brother of mine, he is just, absolutely gobbling up the food. And then he says that, what, this is because he has done this so often. He keeps eating all the time. If I eat like this, my mouth, food will go there, it will not go into my mouth. And at the pace at which Bhima is eating, he's just gobbling up half the food will be left, right, and center. We see, oftentimes we spill food outside our plate or back into our plate. So Bhima is absolutely perfect. Once he leaves the kitchen, nobody will even know that he has eaten, other than the fact that food has become lesser. Arjuna says, he hits upon a brilliant idea. He says, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice. So Arjuna's, what is he seeking? What is his pursuit? His pursuit is archery. He wants to become the world's best archer. He says, I'm going to practice archery, abhyasa, to an extent, till the time I become the world's best archer. So if you've gone to a golf course, you will see there's a driving range. New players as well as accomplished seasoned players, every now and then, they'll just go there, hit ball after ball after, I mean, it's boring actually. Hundreds of thousands of balls, with 3 hours, they'll hit from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., one after the other. They are perfecting their drive through abhyasa, through practice. The video that I had sent after, I think, previous or a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember when, that skateboarder, he wants to cross that river. He's actually a skater. He's not a water skier. He's a skater. And he wants to cross that river. And he falls flat on his face, maybe even injures himself, falls flat on the other shore bank. But he keeps at it till he gets it. That is Abhyasa Yoga. And Bhagavan says, practice. Practice what? Practice the art of focusing your mind on me. Practice the art of placing your intellect on me. If it doesn't come on its own. The first step is just do it. The second step is practice. And he says, Dhananjaya, one who is victorious through training. See, we see this in our world all the time. Whether it is an army soldier or whether it is a corporate executive, training after training after training and development is a thriving department, thriving function. Everyone needs to get trained. From a teacher to a soldier to an executive to anyone, to a banker, whoever it may be. So the Dhananjaya, the one who is victorious through training. Dhananjaya means the one who won wealth for his brother in the Yajna. After Yudhishthira became, that's when Dhananjaya, Arjuna got the name Dhananjaya. Because Yudhishthira launched the Ashwamedha Yajna and Dhananjaya was the responsible for getting the other kings to get subdued, get their subjugation. So that is how, and he got everybody to agree to align to Yudhishthira's kingdom. That's how the name Dhananjaya. But in this context, the victor through gaining the dhana. What wealth? When you do this, you get the wealth of jnana and bhakti. This kind of abhyasa gives you the wealth of jnana and bhakti. And this wealth of jnana and bhakti leads you to victory over samsara. That endless samsara, birth and death samsara. And if one is not able to train, one is not able to practice. See, we find that often, right? You want to practice, you say you practice math, but the child doesn't want to practice math. You pray, you say you practice bowling, you go to the golf driving range and keep driving. Who will do that? It's boring. So if your mind and intellect is at the level that even this practice you cannot do, then what does God advise for such people? Go to the next verse.
Abhyasepya samarthosi.
Abhyasepya samarthosi.
Matkarma paramo bhava.
Matkarma paramo bhava.
Madartamapi karmani.
Madarthamapi karmani.
Kurvan siddhimavapsyasi.
Kurvan siddhimavapyasi. Avapsyasi. Kurvam siddhimavapsyasi.
Abhyasepya samarthosi. Matkarma paramo bhava. Madhartamapi karmani. Kurvan siddhimavapsyasi.
See, you, asamartha, not capable, abhyasaha, of practice, api, also. You are not capable of practice also. Then Bhagavan says, bhava, be, parama, intent upon, mat karma, actions for my sake. This is Bhagavan saying, for Bhagavan's sake. And he says, avapsyasi, you shall attain, siddhim, perfection, api, even, kurvan, doing, karmani, actions, madartham, for my sake. If you are unable to even practice even do Abhyasa Yoga, be intent on performing actions for my sake. You shall attain perfection doing actions for my sake. Performing actions for the sake of God. So this leads the human being to gradual perfection over a period of time. See, God does not want anything from us. He'll say that later, okay? We'll come to this. He says, I don't need anything. But, he'll say, give me flower, give me whatever you want to give you, okay? So he doesn't want anything from us. When he says for my sake, it is actually for our own progress and for our own perfection. So what are the actions that are performed for the sake of Bhagwan? It's actually so beautiful, no? You fix your mind and intellect on me. You can't do that, practice. You can't do that, do this, 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 this. There are some beautiful actions that are prescribed. Srimad Bhagavatam mentions 9 aspects of devotion. This is called Bhagavata Dharma or Navavidha Bhakti. They are one Shravanam. Shravanam means hearing stories of Bhagwan. There is a very interesting, I'll try to link these two in our Puranas examples. Like Parikshit, he actually attained moksha listening to the stories of Bhagwan. So hearing other people talk about it. Right? Bhagwan's Leelas, Bhagwan's stories, Bhagwan's Kathas, all of those. Hari Katha, just listening to those. Shravanam. Kirtanam. Kirtanam is singing, chanting. These are also various forms of prayer, by the way. So if we don't know how to pray, these are ways of prayer. Kirtanam. Chanting, singing songs in praise of Bhagwan. So once you listen, then you also chant, you also recite his Leelas, you also recite his stories, you also praise him. Narada is a perfect example. Or if you don't want to recite stories, if you are not good, just japa. See, japa yagyosmi, Bhagwan had said in the Vibhutis, right? In yagyas, I am japa. So, take his name, like we do in the beginning. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. So that is also Kirtanam. Like sage Narada, he will always Narayana, 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 Narayana. Always, all the time. Even if he's speaking something else, prefix and suffix. In the army, my family used to get very, very entertained. If I'm home on chutti and I get a call, it will be like, sir. And then, yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sir. Like if a sentence of 10 words will have 20 sirs. Beginning, end, middle, here and there, everywhere, sir. Like, and similarly, Narada does Narayana, 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 Narayana. In fact, there is this very interesting story about, Narada asking Vishnu about who is the most ardent devotee of you, Vishnu? And Vishnu says that farmer, he is the most ardent devotee of mine. And Narada goes and says, hey, let's see, he didn't even take my name, let's see. He goes and says, and the farmer is tilling his land, doing his work and all that. And possibly once or twice in the day, 2-3 times, he took Bhagwan's name. He comes back to Vishnu and says, I call your name out all the time. And you say he's more ardent. So Vishnu Bhagwan tells him, you know what? You do whatever you do, go about your day, call my name. I'm giving you this bowl full of this pot full of oil. Not one drop should fall out. So Narada takes that and goes about his day and comes back. And then Bhagwan asks him, how many times did you take my name? Narada says, not even once. Why? Because I had to ensure this is not even you have instructed me. Not even a drop should fall out. Then he realizes that this farmer was intent on his work. See, Karma Yogi, right? He's doing Karma Yoga. So Bhagwan always, he says that Karma Yoga is the best. He'll say it again. So he realizes that doing your job for God and maybe taking his name a couple of times, that's also equally good. So Kirtanam. Kirtanam is chanting and singing his praise. Then Smaranam, remembering God. So if you have heard about Bhagavan, Shravanam, if you have done Kirtanam, you have spoken about him, recited him, japa, then you start remembering him. Even when you're doing nothing or when you're doing anything, you remember Bhagavan. Just remembering him in your mind, his divine glories. Prahlada is a fantastic example. He would remember Bhagavan all the time. That was his quality. Anytime Bhagavan, he is being killed, he's being put in fire, he's remembering Bhagavan. He's being rolled down a hill, he's remembering Bhagavan. Anytime and every time he remembers Bhagavan. Smaranam. Pada Sevanam, like Mahalakshmi, always at Lord's feet, serving him. Archanam, performing ritualistic worship or puja with flowers, with water, abhishekam, those kind of things. Indradyumna, who is a Raja, he was cursed to become an elephant. And when the elephant goes to drink water, a crocodile catches him. And Indradyumna has been performing worship for Bhagavan all the time, all through his life. And as an elephant, he takes the lotus out of the font and does archana for Bhagavan. And says, Adi Mulame, I seek refuge in you, O God. And that way he attains moksha. Vandanam. Vandanam means paying obeisance to Bhagavan. Prostrating to Bhagavan. Nice story is about Dhruva. Dhruva is one known to prostrate. Devotedly prostrate. So intently prostrate that, when he was prostrating, Bhagavan actually came in front of him. He didn't even realize. That intently he was prostrating to Bhagavan. Dasyam, selfless service, having the attitude of being a servant for the Lord, doing anything that you do as a service to Bhagavan, and also performing actual service to Bhagavan in temples and in other places of worship. That is Dasyam. Uddhava, I told you the story of Uddhava Gita, right? The charioteer and companion of Sri Krishna. Lifelong service to Bhagavan. Sakhyam, friendship. Taking Bhagavan, considering Bhagavan as your friend without any expectations. Best example is Sudama. Sudama, childhood buddy of Bhagavan, but never sought anything from him. The poorest of poor. At his wife's pushing, he goes to see Bhagavan. And the wife says, your buddy, your childhood friend. It's like that Satya Nadella story I gave. What if we go and say, Satya Nadella, you are so successful. Give me something, at least a job, if not share your wealth, right? But if you are a true friend, Sudama goes to Bhagavan, but not able to ask him. He gives what he brought, beaten rice, but he's not able to eat. It doesn't even occur to him that he should ask. So, being a friend of Bhagavan without even thinking that you have to ask him. You can treat him as a friend, you can, call him names, you can be friendly with him, you can talk to him, all that, but no expectations. And the last one, Atma Nivedanam. Atma Nivedanam, offering everything that one has, whatever you have, offer it to Bhagavan, including your own self. The best example is King Mahabali. Without hesitation, he gave him everything, all his kingdoms, riches, the world, and finally his own head. So offering anything and everything that you own and yourself to Bhagavan. And this 9 examples or 9 ways of doing action for the sake of Bhagavan. Prahlad actually says all of this. When Hiranyakashipu challenges him, you went to learn in the Gurukul, what did you learn? And he said, I learned to pray to God. What do you mean pray to God? Who is this God? How do you pray? He recites these 9 aspects of prayer, of worship to Hiranyakashipu. And Bhagavan says, now suppose even this is not possible. You can't even do actions, perform actions for my sake. You're so busy in your life, or you don't have the inclination, but you still are a seeker, by the way. Then what do? Bhagavan comes back to the original Karma Yoga. In the next verse.
Atai tadapya shaktosi.
Athai dadapya shaktosi
कर्तुमद्योगमाश्रितः
कर्तुमद्योगमाश्रितः
सर्वकर्मफलत्यागम्
सर्वकर्मफलत्यागम्
ततः कुरु यतात्मवान्
ततः कुरु यतात्मवान्
अतैतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुमद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागम् ततः कुरु यतात्मवान्.
Atha if itad this api also asaktaha not possible asi by you or not possible for you, then what? Tataha then kuru do kartum what you do what you do. Then Bhagavan says mad yogam as my yoga, ashritaha taking refuge in me, yatatmavan self-controlled, sarva karma phalatyagam renouncing fruit of all actions, whatever you do. If you are unable to do this also, which means the seva or for Bhagavan's sake, actions for Bhagavan's sake, then do whatever you do. But do that as my yoga, taking refuge in me, self-controlled, renouncing the fruit of whatever you're doing. Earlier, Bhagavan had specified the kind of actions one should do. Specifically, he had said. Now he is saying, do whatever. He is not giving no restriction, no limit, no ask, nothing. Do anything that you do. He just says, do anything, but do that. If you do anything, then what is the way to progress? Bhagavan says, do it as my yoga. See, people normally perform actions with a selfish purpose, with a selfish goal, in a selfish manner, in order to achieve something that is the goal to achieve. Something that you wish to achieve, some kind of a success. To do that, you perform action, to achieve that. Bhagavan says, control that, curb that aspect of doing something for a result. Just do. Don't play to win the match or win the point. Just play to enjoy the play. Just play. Winning or losing will come. And if we just play, actually winning comes. Do anything as my yoga, taking refuge in me, renouncing the desire for fruits. The person's attitude while performing action is different. The selfish person's attitude while performing action is, what will I get? What is in it for me? Classic, corporate life. What's in it for me? Okay. Here Bhagavan says, nothing doing, no what's in it for me. That attitude changes. Ishwararpana buddhi, prasada buddhi. When you're doing it, do it as madhyoga. When you get the result, take it as prasada. This is nothing but karma yoga. So Bhagavan again comes back to karma yoga. See, every human being is an extrovert. There is nothing called introvert, by the way. Every human being is an extrovert. The extent of extrovertism, that is defined or determined by the thickness of the layer of inherent, we all have inherent tendencies. There are tendencies that come with, that we are born with, and there are tendencies that we develop over a period of time. Genetic code we are born with, and practice code we develop in the way we are growing up, what we see and witness around ourselves, what we learn, and so on. So that inherent tendency determines how much of an extrovert you are. Nobody is fully introvert. And based on this level of extrovertism, the person seeks external pursuits. If you have less of that tendency to be an extrovert, you will see less of external pursuit. If you are more of that, you will see more of it. In the 4 verses that we have just gone through, Bhagavan gives spiritual aspirants, people who are aspiring, the devotees, the sadhakas, he gives them alternate approaches for devotion based on the level of inherent tendency, the thickness of that layer, based on how much extroverted you are, based on the mental makeup of the person. See, does the Bhagavad Gita, that we often say this is a classic example. Bhagavad Gita is that solution, right? This is a classic example. These 4 verses provides a unique and exhaustive treatment for different kinds of people based on their personality, for their self-development. And now, understanding very well that human beings are by nature helplessly veering towards action. They need to get to activity. And at the same time, they seek spiritual upliftment. They are going towards samsara. At the same time, they want spiritual upliftment, because they want to get rid of the worldly problems. When you go towards samsara, samsara is giving you problems. You don't want that. So you want the cake and you want to eat it too. So understanding this, Bhagavan now extols the aspect of performing action without desire for the fruits in the next verse.
Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasa.
Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasa.
Jnanadhyanam vishishyate.
Jnanadhyanam vishishyate.
Dhyanat karma phalatyagaha.
Dhyanat karma phalatyagaha.
Tyaga chantiranantaram.
Tyaga chantiranantaram.
Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasa. Jnanadhyanam vishishyate. Dhyanat karma phalatyagaha. Tyaga chantiranantaram.
Shreyaha, better, indeed he. Abhyasaj, than practice. Jnanam, knowledge. Dhyanam, meditation. Vishishyate, excels. Jnanat, knowledge. Dhyanat, than meditation. Karma phala tyaga, renunciation of fruit of action, is better. Tyagaha, from renunciation, shanti, peace, anantaram, arises immediately. Better indeed than practice is knowledge. Meditation excels knowledge. Better than meditation is renunciation of fruits of action. From renunciation, peace arises immediately. See, when any action is executed with knowledge of that action. See, Bhagavan first says better than practice. You can just practice. Just like that. Just go and practice. But if you have the knowledge, you can just take a flute or a piano and just keep pressing. You know, the chaos will, what is it called when music is not chaos? There's some other word for it, right? Music without tune, you know, that will just come. But if you have knowledge, sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, then it is better than simple practice. So knowledge, action, when it is executed with knowledge, the efficiency as well as the effectiveness of that action is much, much better. There is this term in cricket, copybook stroke. You know, copybook stroke means you're executing a shot to perfection as defined in the learner's manual. Copybook stroke. You can just execute the stroke, or you can execute it copybook. Similarly, knowledge of any spiritual or religious practice is better than following that practice for the sake of it. Thus, knowledge is better than practice. Then, next step. It is well-known fact that excellent work is first executed in the mind. Like they say, no, premeditated, talking of cricket shots, premeditated shots. Things, if they say that the entire world happens in your mind a few seconds before it projects outside. We also know that oftentimes when we do something really well, it would have played out in our mind before it came out as action. Meditation on something that one knows makes that execution of that knowledge very excellent. Similarly, meditating upon spiritual knowledge helps that knowledge to seep in deep inside one's psyche. That makes it easier to naturally dwell in God. at all times. Thus, meditation is better than knowledge. Then while performing action, whatever it may be, cricket shot, meditation, whatever it may be, right? If the mind is diverted towards the result, if I'm going to hit a shot and I'm thinking, am I going to get out? Am I going to get out? The ball that came towards me it's coming towards me. It's still coming. And my mind is thinking, wow, such a good ball. Or am I going to hit a six? Then the chances are that the shot is not going to be as perfect as it would have otherwise been if you were 100% focused. If you're sitting in an exam and thinking, how much am I going to score? Will I get 95 on 100? Then you're probably going to miss out a couple of sums in that, right? The very outcome that you are thinking about, that would get affected in a detrimental manner. We all experience this in our day-to-day life. If you're sitting in meditation thinking, what will I get? What is God going to give me? Then you're not meditating. Meditation means not thinking, right? Or meditation means focusing on one thought. So the renunciation of fruits of action is thus better than meditation. When one gives up any thought of fruits of action, then there is immediate calmness in the mind. Because thought of something that has not come to you is what causes disturbance. If the thought of something that has not come to you is not there, there is calmness. So this is Bhagwan's guidance for the seeker or for the devotee. What is easier to do is better to do as a pursuit. First jump 2 meters and then raise the bar. That is all that Bhagwan is saying here. And when you do that, stage by stage by stage, get your performance better and better and better. Make progress. When one performs work, so perform work without, now let's go the other way around. Okay, perform work without desire of fruit. The resulting calmness, because you don't have desire of something that you don't have, that enables perfection. And that perfection brings about meditation, which then gives knowledge, because the best knowledge is wisdom, right? So if you are not thinking of the result of action and you are performing that action to perfection, that helps you focus on it better, which is meditation. That then gives you experiential knowledge of what you did perfectly, which is better than book knowledge. So that gives the knowledge of the self in terms of spirituality. And then that leads to devotion or bhakti. Once you have that knowledge, then you are able to single-pointedly focus on that knowledge. Like they say again in cricket or in tennis, remember that shot, hit the same way the next time. Ananya bhakti. Bhagwan now enumerates the qualities that the devotee, the seeker, should have, and those that make that seeker dear to Bhagwan. Bhagwan will keep on saying, you have this, it's dear to me. This is dear to me. This is dear to me. Like here he said for a few verses, if you can't do this, do that. If you can't do that, do this. Now he will say, this are dear to me. We shall see that in the next satsang. Hari Om.
We'll repeat today's verses. Chapter 12, verses 5 to 12. Klesho digadarastisham avyaktasakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkam dehavad piravapyate yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate Teshamaham samuddarta nrityu samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha mayyaveshita shetasam mayyeva mana adastva mayi buddhim niveshaya nivashishyasi mayyeva ata urdhvam na samshayaha Ata chittam samadhatum na shaknosi mahi stiram abhyasa yogena tataha mamichaptum dhananjaya abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. अतैतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुमद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यतात्मवान् श्रेयो हि ज्ञानमभ्यासा ज्ञानाद् विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागः त्यागाचान्तिरनन्तरम् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति 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 हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Hari Om. Thank you. Hari Om. Any thoughts, comments?
Actually, I had a question, but this question was from verse 10 of, you spoke about 9 aspects of devotion, but it kind of got clarified in verse 12. But anyway, I'll share what I thought and if the answer that I have got is correct or not. So from 9 aspects of devotion, some bit of it I've either experienced or practiced, but I've seen quite a few of them that have practiced all 9. While they've been practicing all these 9 aspects, it kind of, I feel it's extremely rigid and religious, extremely rigid. I somehow, anyway, that's different. So for me, for me, the whole point of being spiritual, the whole point of having humanity is out of the window. It's so focused on doing all these things. The actual aspect of reaching true devotion is lost. Devotion is somewhere else. So how would one kind of not lose sight of the main part, that's the devotion, while doing all these 9 aspects of or the practices?
Especially when they are your parent, it's even more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they impose it on you also.
Yeah, I don't see the point because my idea of devotion is quite different, and I don't necessarily have to do all of it or some of it.
So, okay, so how did the 12th verse answer your question?
Yeah, so what I have understood is in every, in all the 9 aspects that you have said, it has a purpose. And there is something, I mean, I've been told, or I remember hearing that if you do this, you're going to get that. If you, let's say in the evening, you light diya, there is something for it. In the morning, you recite something and you're going to get something out of it. So it's always associated with some result, either to make me do or to entice me in doing it. I don't know all that, but that's how it is being told to me. So for me, what I have understood is by renouncing the entire thought of receiving something in return itself is an idea of devotion. I don't necessarily have to correlate 2 things. For this, it has to be that. So I don't necessarily have to think of all that. Just do it, is what I understood.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you answered, it's very personal, right? One is, see, I can only say that Bhagwan, see, when he's taking about all this, he's giving directions, he's giving instruction, you know, he's telling, if you're a seeker of Nirguna Brahman, you have to follow these disciplines. If you're a seeker of Saguna Brahman, you have to follow these disciplines. Then he comes down, you know, he says, okay, these are the ways. If you're not able to focus your mind, then what do you do? If you're not able to do that, then what do you do? If you're not able to do that, then what? Then he says, you know, he takes it the other way around, where he says that whatever is the easiest is the best way to follow, right? So each of these, if you notice, is addressed to an individual seeker. Bhagwan never talks to, Bhagwan is talking to Arjuna. Okay, if among the people who are listening, who are standing in the battlefield, okay, and among all of us, Bhagavad Gita is still there after thousands, some say 5,000 some years, some say it is 10,000 some years, whatever it may be, right? Timing is a different thing. But this infinitude of human beings who have heard this, sometimes repeatedly, right? It is for us to learn. He is addressing individuals. He is not addressing groups. It is human beings that try to make it applicable to groups. So Bhagavan doesn't try to say that bunch of you should do this, that other bunch should do this. He says, depending on your nature, your inherent tendencies, your vasanas, this I think will be useful to you, try it. He doesn't even say do this. Right? So that's how Bhagavan gives guidance. Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you start following with the Guru Parampara is what start stipulating how one should behave, others should behave. So when that happens, my only thing is, or what I have tried to do, I have also been a rebel, I have also protested, and so on and so forth, right? But sometimes rebelling and protesting helps, because when you rebel and protest, you counter-argue. That counter-argument gives you a solution to what you should do. So that also happens. So take advantage of whatever it is, take advantage of the convenience and the inconvenience in your own pursuit. Ultimately, you are here because there is a pursuit. That's why you are here. So take advantage of both what is convenient and what is inconvenient to help in your pursuit. There you can be selfish till you drop that selfishness also.
Thank you.
But yeah, it is human tendency to lecture others. Bhagavan says, no, if you say, if you don't relate to your own, the deha, and you are completely into it, you don't relate to it and you are completely into it, right? Both aspects, which then causes that you are not able to get what I call, I don't call it detachment, detached involvement, right? You can't be uninvolved, but you have to be detached. So we have to practice detached involvement with ourselves first. Then we practice detached involvement with others who are imposing things on us. And then you are able to actually be detached over a period of time. But yeah, take what is useful and follow it, because at the end of the day, being devoted is what helps. And it is your right to reject what is not useful.
Thank you.
They will also understand over a period of time. Like my mother, I think she was kind of disappointed that I'm doing, this is like Advaitic philosophy, right? Where I've gone to and read Chinmaya Mission, that we belong to Vishishta Advaita. She's a staunch Vishishta Advaita, but now she attends my Satsang. So whatever it is, she also picks up from that. But I think in the beginning, she was not very happy that I was doing that. So your parents will understand after some time.
Because when to Savana Brahman
She's saying that she's just emphasizing. See, she's saying after all this, you're saying Saguna Brahman only. See, I try my best in my satsang to play the neutral path. I don't veer towards either extreme. There are very, very knowledgeable people. My own Guruji, he will completely say, Jnana Yoga, Nirguna Brahman. That's it. But I have not become that much. I mean, I have great faith and alignment towards my Guru, but I am not yet convinced of that only this you have to do. It doesn't appeal to me. Yeah, I have to do only what appeals to me. I can't tell others what you can only do this. I try to stick to the mid path. I try my best not to project either of the extreme ideologies. See, you can read Bhagavad Gita and interpret it in various ways. But the best way is to interpret it in the simple, Sri Krishna is presenting it in such a simple manner. Why do we complicate it? And how does it matter? When we know whether Bhagavan is Saguna or Nirguna, that time we would have been enlightened enough. When we don't know today, let's focus on devotion.
And Vishnadeva itself is a mediocre thing.
But that said, I respect all these schools of thought because they help people who, majority of the people have no clue. See, there was in this Instagram, there was this questionnaire in one of the, I think Swami Chinmayananda's only. The simple question, what we said today, the question was, should you be focusing on the result of action or not? And everybody, what should you be focusing on when you're acting? Okay. And there were some 4 or 5 options. 80% were saying you should be focusing on the goal. So most people are unaware, whereas it's so simple to understand. If I sit in the exam and think about my marks, my exam is not going to be as well attempted as otherwise it would be. If I'm going to think of the outcome of the shot I'm playing, I'll probably get out. I just have to be single pointed. Ananya Bhakti, entirely single pointed, Chitta Ekagrata, towards the play, not towards what is going to happen after the shot or after the test. It's such a simple logic, but people don't get it, no? So most people are like that. So for them, these schools of thoughts are extremely useful. Extremely useful. You have to say loudly. My mother is saying something I don't think you guys can hear. Okay, nobody can understand what this is. But no one can hear what you're saying. No, for that I have to understand. No? Yeah, it's not clear. No, she's saying something, but it's not very clear. The volume, that's okay. She's asking me to repeat, but I have to understand what she's saying, not to repeat. She's saying something which is high Vishishta Dvaita. I don't understand. Modi ji said it also, she says.
That's a mediocre thing which Ramanuja says. Veda Shruti, Abheda Shruti, Ghataka Shruti.
Veda Shruti, Abheda Shruti, Ghataka Shruti. All this I have to, I don't know any of this.
No, Vishishtasta Advaitam. Visheshana good adjectives.
See, Visheshana, Vishishtatva Advaitam. So, special Advaitam. See, the name itself, there is a problem to me, right? So, you have said that Advaitam, this is Vishesha Advaitam. Okay. So, Advaitam, Dvaitam, everything is there in Vishishtatva. That's what she's saying. Okay. It's the best.
Easy to follow.
She's saying it's not best, it's easy to follow.
For the common man.
Yeah, that is true. Bhagavan has said that Saguna Brahman worship is easy. But he doesn't say you should worship Saguna. If you are more accomplished, then do Nirguna Brahman. That's up to you. You have to decide.
Shankara's philosophy is Atma Swarupa. It is very difficult to go in and see it. But Divya Mangala Vigraham, God in temples and whatever form like that.
She's saying what we just read. Shankara philosophy, Adi Shankara, Divya Atma Swarupam. Like, I am God, Atma Swarupa, right? Divya Atma Swarupa. So, Aham Brahmasmi, correct? Which is what he said. Aham Brahmasmi. Divya Atma Swarupa, Aham Brahmasmi. The Divya Atma have the same Swarupa. I am Brahman. That is Shankara's philosophy, she said. And Ramanuja philosophy, which is Vishishta Advaita, is Divya Mangala Vigraham. The Vigraham which is Mangala, which is made Mangala through the
auspicious,
which is made auspicious through various practices which they perform to make it auspicious. They'll take a stone and they'll make that stone worshipable, right? They'll create that energy in that stone. So that is the Divya Mangala. Yeah, So it's a scaffolding. It is something which you can hold on to. It's easier. That is true. That's a fact. The other one is tougher. It's very difficult. That's true.
It's the ultimate, but it's very tough. This is practical.
Yeah. See, but that's why I said, if you noticed when I talked about it, I said that if you have that focus on the single pointed focus, automatically devotion comes. If you are devoted to God, if you consider Him the Supreme, if you perform all your actions for Him, automatically focus comes. See, that's why I'm saying, why do human beings spend time debating on all this? You do this, that comes. You do that, this comes. You do. It's that C. Rajagopalachari's, when he talks about it, right? Jnana and Bhakti are this one and the same. Sorry, Shubha, you were saying something.
Yeah. See, what I've learned practically is we are all conditioned as we are growing up. It's basically a growing up environment, our school, our peers, our college. Everything gives us a viewpoint. And at some point you agree with it. Some point we are not able to decide whether that's your viewpoint. And as you grow older, that's when you're very clearly sure of what you feel is right. Okay, so when that's happening, when I read Tattva Bodha, it was about so many layers being part of us. It's like AC or the filter of AC. We have so many layers within our mind which are invisible. And layer by layer, we have to keep clearing it day in and day out so that we can condition ourselves to what you have been telling all these days, to have that dedication, single pointed this thing. So I feel spirituality and your lifestyle is somewhere if it gets integrated, you enjoy life to the fullest. And it is not difficult. If we keep it separate is when we have trouble understanding what it is. And if we are able to integrate and understand and try to put them together and understand that we have so many things in our head that have been pre-told and being told that this is how it is, this is how we have to do it, without us really, as an individual, realizing whether is it what I want to do, is it right, is it wrong, why is it right? And if I see my people around me happy and if it's doing good to everybody, then why can't I follow it? So somewhere it is, I feel it is just being open about accepting and being dedicated to whatever you're doing with love and faith and leaving the result, like you say, it'll happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well put.
Thank you. This I feel very strongly about it now at this point. But I was very confused in many years of my growing up years. I was very confused. It took a lot of time to practice, like you say. Abhyasa is one thing. Studying, understanding, listening, all those 9 things that you said are so crucial, and accepting viewpoints of others and making your own viewpoints are all very nice. You end up understanding quite a few. It becomes holistic then.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Subha. That's true. Anything else? Any other thought? Okay, if not, then Hari Om, we'll complete chapter 12 in the next satsang. Hari Om, we'll see you next Saturday.